Next, we'll hear from Martin Hoshino, Administrative Director.
Thank you, Chief. In the interest of time, I'm going to go very swiftly also. That's a remarkable schedule. I just don't know how you do that. But while you were away, I was working on this director's report, cataloging the activities that were occurring here. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes, as usual, to talk about the budget, but I actually want to talk about the regular written report itself and what it actually represents, because we also have some transition and some members that are occurring, and sometimes it's important to kind of recap why do we actually do this report and why is this report in your materials regularly. So the report is basically summary information of all of the activities that's going on literally between the meetings, and it really reflects that buildup of either issues or recommendations or directions that the council has given, or to promote awareness that will frame and shape the issues and the decisions that will actually come to the council. In some respects, it's a bridge between the annual agendas that you approve each year as you direct your lower committees and the staff of those particular committees for the assignments and the work that you do. And so that builds, and this report essentially chronicles the activity that gets to the final products that come before you. So let me give you a couple of illustrations, for example, for this particular month and this particular meeting. So the first one being the empirical study on jury instructions. So on today's agenda, you're going to be asked to take action on some revisions and additions to 42 criminal jury instructions. Now, several years ago, a prior council had approved a comprehensive set of criminal and civil jury instructions, and these instructions were the culmination of an effort spearheaded by the council in a previous direction, and the direction was to create a comprehensive, legally accurate set of jury instructions that are readily understood by the average juror. So as the council continues to consider and approve these updates, it expects the maintenance and the continuous improvement of that particular product. And so as part of that, an empirical study occurred, and it was published in February. And the study had 312 speaking participants acting as mock jurors. They were read through a trial transcript with various juror instructions. The jurors were then asked to render a verdict, recommend a sentence, and then they were questioned on their comprehension, legal definitions, the reasonable doubt, circumstantial and direct evidence, and intent, etc. And the result of this, as it's measured, basically concluded that the mock jurors comprehend the CalCrim instructions significantly better than the older version of the instructions. And so maintaining this is actually a pretty vital and important responsibility for the council, and it's ably staffed, as you know, by former council member Justice Tangeman, Justice Kriegler, and some of our staff, Bruce Greenlee and Robin Seeley. And so I would submit to you that it's a validation, at least, of the work. When you launch these activities, it actually happens and it comes before you and it builds. The second thing is to draw your attention to the national outreach, research, and the linkage that goes on with some of our local practices that are out there. So briefly mentioning inside the report a couple of more examples. We have two recently new established work groups, one being the Ability to Pay work group that had its first meeting in February. It's led by Judge Mark Burrell, and they're developing a particular tool related to an individual's ability to pay fines that are associated with either traffic or some other infraction. So they convened, and we brought and had them briefed by other state courts throughout the country that are similarly situated in working on this, as well as the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights and the U.S. Department of Justice. And then following from that, in terms of you remember in January's presentation here, we had Ed Latessa present to the council. He was also then brought back to work with the Pre-Trial Detention Workgroup that is out there working to make a similar presentation. And then we also brought out Washington, D.C., which is one of the speakers that you heard from earlier in public session or public comment, Kentucky, New Jersey, and New Mexico to talk about their programs. And then we actually brought in, because we have some courts that are moving along in this area, some of our own courts from Humboldt, Imperial, and Santa Clara, reciprocated by sharing their own information about their practices. And so I illustrate this as how we use the council and the agendas and the direction that you give to the lower committees and the work groups to also extend ourselves and to cross-pollinate the ideas and approaches so that we can keep informing the work that we're doing here in California. Now, with respect to budget, it is the budget season, and shifting there. The legislative hearings are underway and in full swing. The short version is that there is not a lot of activity that is occurring in terms of action. There's a lot of listening going on, and there's a lot of informational aspects related to the hearings because of the uncertainty related to the budget. There are two looming items that shape the context of this year's budget. One is the state of the actual economy here in the state. What actually is it? Where then are state revenues? And of course, what will be the impacts of budgetary changes and proposals coming out of Washington, D.C.? Nevertheless, we are there being treated well, I would say, in terms of getting opportunities to be able to represent and to advocate. We've been represented by Judge Deneen Guy from Santa Cruz, as well as Judge Steve Manley from Santa Clara in our first hearing at the Senate. And we think they did an outstanding job of not just presenting on behalf of our priorities and our unmet needs, but also describing what the actual impact is when you chronically underfund, inadequately fund a judicial branch in a judicial system. The committee also, Senate committee reconvened yesterday, and I think the hearing, as I understand it, went quite well, and we were pretty ably represented by Jake Chatters and Kim Flenner and Zlatko Theodorovich and others. And again, most of the issues are resting as we move toward the May revision. Probably likely released May 12th and not May 15th, owing to the calendars and schedule. The last updates, of course, from the budget will be coming in off of the April tax returns. We will be having another council meeting shortly after that release, so we will probably talk more in depth about what is going on there when we get there. So the discussions continue. I want to, for a moment, stop and really thank and extend a debt of gratitude to Judge Barton from the PJ committee, Jake Chatters and Kim Flenner from the CEO committee, Judge Conklin from the Trial Court Budget Advisory Committee, Judge Botke from CJA, and all the individual trial courts that have been really spending a lot of time at the Capitol in a difficult year. Make no mistake, we are all fighting as hard as and ably as we can. It is a difficult year, and I don't think I need to dwell on that with everybody, but we are making our best effort. Lastly, with respect to the state of the judiciary, on Monday, the Chief Justice will deliver that to a joint session of the legislature. Prior to that, another partner for us in advocacy, the Bench Bar Coalition members, are going to be joining you, members of the council, for a series of meetings with the legislator to support our advocacy on our priorities. I think there's somewhere north of 65 meetings that are actually scheduled in the building for us on that particular day. So on that day, I know many of you will be there to support the chief and help raise awareness of our important issues in terms of protecting public safety and providing equal access to justice. And that concludes my report, Chief.